Edinburgh, Scotland is truly one of those places that absolutely lives up to the hype, and yes, it's rainy and it's gray a lot of the time, but it honestly doesn't matter because that's how insanely beautiful the city is. It's like you've stepped back in time and you're in fairy tale land. I absolutely cannot recommend it enough. Before I dive into the top 10 things to do in Edinburgh, let's talk about how to get here. So it's only an hour flight from London or 4.5-ish hours by train. So it's really up to you and what you prefer. In all honesty, if you calculate the time it takes from you to get from the city center to the airport, going early enough for security, and then going from the airport to city center once you arrive, it's probably the same amount of time since you go on the train from city center to city center, so it kind of knocks off that time. So it really just comes down to cost and what method of transportation you personally prefer. We opted to take the train and I absolutely recommend it, even if you just want to do it one way and then fly back to London. It was really nice to just go from city center to city center with beautiful countryside views all along the way. Plus you have Wi-Fi the entire time, so I feel like the entire travel experience was just more enjoyable than flying, but that's my personal opinion. A little tip if you do decide to take the train is to buy a rail card. You'll probably make your money back with just this one journey. So if you do plan on doing even more train journeys around the UK within the span of 1 year, it's definitely worth it. It's £30 for a single rail card or £30 total for a couple if you decide to do a couple rail card, which means you do have to travel together at all times. So if you download the Trainline app and make an account, then you click on account, go to Railcards, and then you can purchase it there, whichever one you're kind of looking at. It depends on your age, and then again, like I said, if you're doing a single or you're doing a two together rail card or a couple rail card. Then once it's purchased, you just make sure to click whatever rail card you bought when you're searching for train journeys, and you'll see how much of a discount you actually get. I highly, highly recommend doing this to save you some money. I think on just our Edinburgh journey, it saved us about like £80, so paid for itself just within that one journey. All right, so now on to the top 10 things to do in Edinburgh, starting with Edinburgh Castle, which is just the focal point of the city. You can see it from pretty much anywhere you are in the old or the new town area as you're walking around. It's just this massive castle on a hill. Cue Ed Sheeran song. And the views are absolutely stunning. So if you want to go inside, you can pay £19.50 for a ticket. I opted not to do that because I was on a strict budget. I didn't feel like I missed out at all by not going inside. It's still just super magical just to look at from the outside, but of course that's completely up to you and your budget. Next up we have Walk the Royal Mile, and wow, this is incredible. You start from Edinburgh Castle and end at the Palace of Holyrood and the Parliament Building. Just as the name suggests, it's slightly longer than a mile and it's a very easy walk. You're essentially just walking through the heart of Old Town Edinburgh. So of course, if you really, really wanted to, you could probably like book it and do it in 20 and 30 minutes. But there are so many cute shops, so many nice restaurants along the way. I highly suggest, taking a few hours to soak it all in, wander down random alleyways here and there to find cute photo opportunities and whatnot. We were actually there during the Fringe Festival, which unless you're super into small theater shows, I do not recommend because it was crazy expensive and super crowded. But the entire Royal Mile was filled with street performers and people promoting their shows for the festival, so it added to the fun vibe and atmosphere. I'm not sure if it's always like that or it's just heightened for the Fringe Festival, but you definitely get some vibes as you're walking around there. So now we'll talk about where the Royal Mile ends, which is at the Palace of Holyrood and the Parliament Building. It's right next to it. So you can just go up to the gate and admire the outside of it or pay £19.50 to go inside. You guessed it, I didn't go inside because I'm always on a strict budget, but for me it was more about the experience of just walking the Royal Mile and having this beautiful palace to look at when I finished, which I really loved, especially because it started pouring down rain as soon as we got to the end of the Royal Mile, so it was like this official Edinburgh welcome, since it wouldn't really be Edinburgh without a little rain, right? Now we'll talk about the first Harry Potter item on the list, Victoria Street. This is rumored to be the inspiration for Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter series, since Edinburgh is where J.K. Rowling wrote the first book. And let me just tell you, regardless of whether you're a Harry Potter fan or not, it might be one of the most beautiful streets I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, it has these colorful shops all below and these gorgeous old brick buildings all up above. Like, you couldn't dream of something prettier than this street, in my opinion. So I had truly felt like I'd stepped back in time, and I just needed a few minutes to just stand there and soak it all in. It was just that stunning. Both because I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd and of course just because of how stunning it was. Next, we'll talk about another street that gives similar vibes to Victoria Street, which is Cockburn Street. And Honestly, I only found this because we were walking down the Royal Mile. I checked my Google Maps and saw this little photo icon, like camera icon in one of the random alleyways, and I was like, weird, I wonder what's down this alleyway, like this random photo opportunity. So we just trusted Google and we went with it, and oh my god, it did not disappoint. Like, totally different vibe from Victoria Street, but just as stunning and magical in its own way. And since it's less crowded than Victoria Street, it might be a better place to get some nice photos and videos. Next up is the Scott Monument, which is actually not in the Old Town. It's up in the New Town where all like the shopping is. It's just a beautiful monument to look at and snap some photos of. And both days that we were there was someone dressed up and playing the bagpipes in front of it, you know, wearing a kilt and everything, which I'm sure is obviously super touristy and not a very local thing, but I enjoyed the ambiance. Fun fact, my high school's mascot was the turton, which is actually the print that's on a kilt. So yeah, our mascot was a print that's on a kilt that's worn by a person. So at all our school assemblies, our school functions, we had people in kilts playing the bagpipes, specifically the song Scotland the Brave, which is actually what he's playing in this next clip. So it was totally giving me high school flashbacks. It was so funny. Nearby the Scott Monument up in the New Town is Princes Street Gardens and St. John's Graveyard. So the gardens is more like a big park, which I'm always a fan of. I just love grabbing a little snack, a drink, hanging out in the park for a while. It always makes me feel more like a local rather than a tourist, which those of you who watch my videos know I love trying to be as local as possible versus like being a total tourist. Plus, I just love the park culture in Europe and in the UK since we don't really have that in most of the US. And connected to this park is St. John's Graveyard, which honestly we just stumbled upon. We were just walking through the park. There's nothing particularly to see here, but it's just super beautiful, where a lot of tombstones are covered in like this bright green moss. So it's a really nice place to take a stroll, look out the dates on the tombstones and realize how long these have been here for, which again is a crazy concept as an American, since some of these tombstones and a lot of, you know, buildings all around Europe and the UK have been around longer than our country has been a country. So just take some time to relax, enjoy both the park and the graveyard. Now we'll head up to the University of Edinburgh, which, surprise, surprise, is just a stunning building. The architecture is just immaculate. There's nothing in particular to do here, but it's just nice to walk around and admire the buildings. And if you're a park girl like me or park boy like me, nearby there are the Meadows, which is just a lovely park to sit and relax in, and it's super massive. Next up, we have some more Harry Potter things at Greyfriar's Kirkyard and nearby at Elephant Castle. So at Greyfriar's, this is the graveyard that inspired some of the names in the Harry Potter series, including Tom Riddle or Voldemort. So it's cool to see if you're a fan to go to the tombstone and realize, oh my god, J.K. Rowling literally stood here however many years ago and was inspired by this. Like, I was just so excited to be there. And then nearby, like, you know, a 5-ish minute walk away is the Elephant Castle Cafe, which unfortunately is closed right now. I'm not sure why or when it will reopen, but this is where J.K. Rowling actually wrote a lot of the first Harry Potter books. So if you're not a Harry Potter fan, you probably won't care, especially since it's closed. But if you are, you gotta go and at least just snap a photo of the outside. And last but certainly not least is Arthur's Seat, which unfortunately is something we did not get to do because of the weather and the fact that we didn't bring hiking equipment that was waterproof. Like, we literally just had one pair of shoes and a light jacket, which, you know, is fine for rain in the city because as soon as it starts to rain, you just run under an overhang or pop into a shop or restaurant real quick, but not when you're, you know, hiking out in nature. So I'm super bummed we missed it because I've heard it's absolutely stunning. Essentially, it's like this big hill that you can hike to the top of to see the views of Edinburgh down below. But learn from our mistakes. Plan to do this on the best weather day during your time that you're there, or you might miss it, or you might not even be able to enjoy it as much. Plus, you might not even have views depending on how bad the weather is. So I think total it's only supposed to take about an hour, so it's not too crazy or strenuous of a hike, but hopefully you can plan better than I did and actually get a chance to do it. For anyone who is planning a trip to London or the UK, you absolutely cannot miss Edinburgh, especially because of how easily accessible it is from London. I usually am, you know, whatever about cities. Like, they're nice to live in because they have all the amenities and they make life easy, but it's rare that I'm like, wow, this city is incredible, and I actually fall in love with the place like I actually did with my favorite city in the world, Istanbul. Also did this with Tokyo, and now Edinburgh. The charm here is just absolutely unmatched. So Since I mentioned it, let's go ahead and compare the top 10 things to do in Edinburgh with the top 10 things to do in Istanbul and see which one you'd rather visit.